Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and give you, Mike, the hosting responsibility. So if you just please mute people as you need to, as they
Yep.
come. Thank you. All right. So we are ready to go. So first, again, my name is Mike Belfiore. I'm the Director of Athletics at WCC. We have various members of our staff on the call as well today, our assistant AD and members of our office staff, and we have a few coaches on the call. And we welcome everybody. It's really been a lot to kind of get to here, and we've been gathering as much information as we can, and we thought it'd be a great idea to have, again, our current and new students, along with their families and parents, to have an opportunity to get a sense of what sports are going to look like in the fall at WCC, and to answer any questions that you may have. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'm going to try to get to them at the end. But if there's a topic that we're on and you have a question that you want to ask right as we're talking about it, I'll do my best to try and be mindful of the questions that are coming in. And if I don't see them or if I don't get to them, then I'll try to get to them right at the end. We'll have a question and answer session. And, hopefully this will go a long way as to kind of let you know what things are going to be like. So first, I'd like to commend the newcomers, especially, on making a great choice in deciding on WCC for your education. High school seniors and all students really are going to be attending college for the first time or maybe the second year under circumstances that no one else has really seen before. And, I want to commend you on your stick-to-itiveness. We think that WCC is a great choice, especially under these circumstances. You could stay home, stay local, stay safe, and still have the opportunity to participate in our programs and get a great education. First thing I want to discuss is what's going on at WCC this fall academically. So if there's any questions out there, or if anyone is still unsure, the college has announced that we are going fully remote for the fall. There's going to be a select few classes that they will allow students to access campus for. And then there may be some circumstances where they allow students to access campus, athletics being one of them. But for the most part, your classes are going to be online this fall. There are two types of online classes, and terms that you should be familiar with or get familiar with are synchronous and autosynchronous classes. The synchronous classes are ones that you might find that you have a certain time that you're expected to meet, either via a platform like this, a Zoom. WCC has their own platform that a lot of professors use or used this past spring in order to have a class at a set time. So it's no different than having class on 10 a.m. on a Tuesday on campus. You're expected to be there at 10 a.m. You'd be expected to log in and participate in class in an online version of it. That's what the college is trying to develop, more of those types of classes, because we feel students learn better under those circumstances. And then there are the autosynchronous classes, which are kind of the ones that you're probably more, if you've taken an online class, you're more familiar with. Those are the ones that have certain deadlines. Maybe you're more free to do things on your own, and you'll have the flexibility to do it on your own time. Those classes are great because they offer flexibility, but they're also require a high level of discipline as far as getting your work done. And a lot of first-time freshmen, that may be something new, and that may be something that you want to think about. Are you going to be able to carve out enough time to be able to keep up with the work and not fall behind and to make it? So those are the two types of classes the college is going to be offering this fall, and that is set. So if there was any question in any of your minds about what's going to happen this fall, hopefully that clears it up. We're definitely going to be online for the fall for most every class, with a few exceptions. The other thing that's come about during the summer is the NJCAA, that's our governing body, has made the decision to move most fall sports to the spring semester. So for us, soccer, women's volleyball, we do have fall golf, but it's a non-competitive season, so that's going to be largely unchanged. Cross country, and then also, I'm sorry, not cross country, fall baseball. men's and women's basketball starts in the fall. So that is impacted as well. The only sport that we offer that would not be impacted by that decision in particular is cross country. I will get into cross country specifically about, we're hoping to be able to offer it this fall, but there are certain things that have to happen in order for us to be able to offer it. So moving the fall sports to spring means that that's when the competition season is going to occur. However, we plan on taking full advantage of the opportunity to practice. And in a minute, I'll explain to you what that would look like. But I wanted everyone to be clear on that. That is the decision that they have made. So for sure, the fall sports, men's soccer, women's volleyball, men's and women's basketball will not start until January, February, and March. And I'll get into those time periods as well for which sports start when. So practices. So when and how can we practice? The ability to practice depends on the college's pandemic response plan, which they have in place right now. The college is expected to open its doors to start this plan and start slowly bringing things back online around the second week of August. Once that happens, we will be at sub-level 1, and there's all sub-levels. There's actually 4 of them. Sub-level 1 is the most restrictive and doesn't include participation in intercollegiate athletics or really even our staff accessing campus. That's just to be able to get the essential staff back on campus to prepare for the fall semester and all things that need to occur to bring staff and students back even on a limited basis. So I expect that time period, if everything stays the same as far as the coronavirus in New York State, that should last for a few weeks, and we should be able to move to sub-level 2 sometime in September. And it's then when intercollegiate athletics can start to have some activities. So what that would look like is modified practices where we'll have some restrictions on things. Well, certainly social distancing will be a part of it. There'll be restrictions on the types of practices we can hold and the activities that we can conduct. There will be only practices, no competition, no even inter-squad type competition. Picture more drills and training activities than actual games. And so that's what we're probably going to be looking at during sub-level 2. If things go well, the college will move to sub-level 3, which will be more access to campus. Our staff will start to be on campus more. It'll start to look like a more normal workday for us, though we may end up still working a few days from home, a few days on campus. Practices should start to look like a normal practice again. You should expect to see, inter-squad type games, different activities that are more what you're used to as far as a normal practice. However, we'll still have social distancing guidelines. There'll be mandatory things put in place. I'll get into that in a minute as far as health checks and screenings that we'll be doing. We'll be doing that during all phases, really, or most of the early phases. And different activities that you'll be asked to do in order to be able to practice. We have protocols in place as far as what happens if somebody tests positive. One of the biggest challenges with running a fall season would have been what happens when somebody tests positive. If we were going to have competition, let's say a soccer player tests positive in the middle of our season. What does it mean? Certainly that player would have to be pulled away from the team. They may have to be quarantined, or they would have to be quarantined. Then we'd have to do contact tracing by whatever the contact tracing standards are to determine what other players may need to be quarantined and pulled away from the team. And then what does that mean for being able to practice and compete? And then you multiply that by the amount of teams that we actually play against. And it was hard to envision us getting through a season under those circumstances. So that's why, we are in full support of the NJCA's decision to push fall sports to the spring. Practicing does not affect eligibility at all. So we'll be able to safely practice under those circumstances, under the strict circumstances that the college has laid before us with the sub-levels. There's been a lot of care and thought put into, what types of things we can do when and in what ways that we go about them. and what kind of medical support that we need in order for us to do it safely. So our position is, so long as we can do things safely, we're going to conduct those activities. If there's any question about whether we can do it safely or not, then look to see us doing alternate activities, which may be Zoom meetings with your team or Zoom trainings and things like that. So, and incidentally, when we're at sub-level 1, those are some of the options that we have on the table to start team activities. So before we even get to come on to campus, your coaches are working on plans on, all right, what can we do in the interim? And again, you know, those electronic type things and communicating, we think that it could be a good start to kind of putting the teams together, getting to know everybody, and developing a sense of camaraderie amongst the teams. So again, practicing, as long as we don't play an intercollegiate varsity game that counts, you're not using eligibility. We may even have the opportunity to scrimmage if we get to sub-level 3 sometime in the fall, which is the hope. We can do inter-squad scrimmages, or if there's other teams out there who are willing to scrimmage us, and again, it's safe to do so, we may even scrimmage in the fall. So that wouldn't occur until sub-level 3 for sure. Sub-level 4 is a recovery level. That's largely, you know, where we're done with the pandemic, and you know, we feel like it's all behind us, and state and local officials and federal officials say that you know, we're in the clear now. I don't expect us, based on what I'm hearing now, to get to that point anytime during the academic year. It's certainly possible, but it's not something that we're really focused on. But again, we can still compete in sub-level 3. So a lot of people probably have questions. What are some of the things that we're going to be doing to make sure that we're safe? Well, certainly putting things in phases and working in small groups to start is really one of the beginning things that we can do to make sure that we're reducing the amount of contact that people have with each other. In addition to that, students are going to be required for mandatory temperature checks. Students, faculty, and staff, everybody who comes into a practice situation, including our athletic trainer and our coaches, are going to be subject to temperature checks every day. We're also going to have a health screening that you'll have to fill out every day. Those restrictions may ease a bit, but you know, at least to start, that's what you can expect to see. You can expect to see social distancing practices in place all throughout practices. You can expect to be wearing masks whenever physical activity isn't going on. So, you know, if there's instruction going on, a coach is out in the field or in a court, and you know, you're watching and learning, and the coach is demonstrating, then everyone on the sideline watching is going to have to wear a mask during that time period. Once they go back out in the court, you know, we want to make sure that people aren't hindered by wearing a mask, you know, physically, you know, cardiovascular wise and everything like that. So, you know, we will be allowed to take masks off for certain activities. Anything rigorous is something that's a good example of that. But apart from that, you're going to be expected to come in and leave wearing masks and wear masks during downtime. So those are some of the things. The college is committed to a really aggressive cleaning and safety plan. And we're going to have to carry out that sort of thing as well. So for example, if we have a basketball shoot around, which, you know, in sub-level 2, that can be expected, more of a shoot around type thing, where everyone gets their own basketball and they keep that basketball for the entire practice. And then at the end of practice, all the gear that you've used gets washed down. You know, baseball, you know, we'll certainly do a certain amount of that, you know, catcher's gear, helmets, things like that. We're even talking about, well, maybe batting helmets or things that people have to bring their own. You know, absolutely no sharing of gloves, absolutely no sharing of any head coverings or hats or anything like that. So, I'm sorry, my house phone's ringing here.
Call from Dinata.
My apologies. So, you know, from that standpoint, you know, there's a lot of things that we're going to be putting in place. We're also going to be training all of our coaching staff on how to put these practices in place and uphold them. You know, people, you know, it's real easy for people to get comfortable, especially if COVID-19 is, you know, at the levels that they are now, and people start to feel like, hey, no one's getting infected, no one's getting sick, it's still really important for us to uphold what our safety standards are. So our coaches are going to need to be trained on that and make sure that they uphold them. And same goes for our student athletes. Before you even start, you'll be expected to be subject to training that will explain to you the importance of the measures in place. So, so those are just some of the things that we're going to be doing to keep a safe environment. Knowing that we're not going to have competition in the fall, that changes the dynamic of our staff workload. Our focus is going to be on getting these practices set up and run safely, and being able to supervise them and make sure that we have the coverage that we need from a medical standpoint, from a cleanliness standpoint, all those types of things. But then our focus is going to shift to academic support. So what you would normally see as a student athlete would be academic support for those first-time freshmen who've never attended college, and those who historically maybe haven't performed well and need a little extra help throughout the year. And so we have a program called the VCASE program, and that's an acronym standing for Vikings Collaborative Academic Support Environment. And what you would see in a normal year is you would see that we have a dedicated academic support coordinator who works with the students in those categories. And those students are expected to have weekly meetings with that person. That person serves as a liaison to other academic support things that we have on campus. It serves as somebody other than the coach and our athletic staff to kind of talk to about the challenges that you may face. And certainly learning online is a challenge that not a lot of our students had been prepared for, and probably will continue to have a hard time with at times. And so that person could be there to help with that situation and help support and give advice as to how they can overcome those challenges. So instead of having the VCASE program as we used to know it, our full-time staff are now going to go to work in case studying all of our student athletes, which means that all of our student athletes are going to get that same level of support to start with, and likely throughout the year. And we're going to want to really, really make a concerted effort to make sure that the students understand what goes on with the academics, understand how to learn that environment, understand where they're at. We have a great program and great software now that works with our faculty on campus that allows us to get some real-time estimates of how a student's doing. And if a flag is raised through that system, we're able to address it immediately and kind of go over it with the student. So for example, if a student has missed class consecutively, or is late on assignments, or their work is poor, we can now find that out, within, days or weeks at most, as opposed to, the student not really ever knowing where they're at and not getting maybe a report till in the middle of the semester, so that we can take some action and review it with the student and kind of go over the things that are needed in order to help those situations or change those behaviors if need be. And so that's something that I think we were pretty successful in. We made that adjustment in the spring when the students were sent home, and we look to have a similar setup with probably even more involvement into the fall. So what's really important is when we have our practices, that our staff is there, and we're going to want to get to know our students. We're going to want to have face-to-face contact. And so we think that academic support piece will be even more successful if we're establishing those relationships in the fall, as opposed to, a purely electronic relationship, email, phone, even Zoom meetings, where we're not ever able to see each other face-to-face and get to know each other. So that's why practices in the fall for all teams is important as well. We may be arguably for certain sports practicing earlier and with more frequency than we normally would, just because of the situation that we're in. So I think for other teams that are used to practicing, as opposed to practicing 5-6 days a week and competing, we're going to scale it back to 2 to 3 days a week during certain periods of time. So that's kind of what to expect from an academic support plan. A lot of people, I'm sure, have questions about what spring sports are going to look like. When do we start? When do we start practice? When do we compete? Again, there's There's periods of time in the fall that we can have unofficial practice, which is limited to 8 hours a week. There's times in the fall we all have a window of 60 days where we can have up to 20 hours a week of practice. And then there's a dead period in the fall, kind of starting in the mid-December time, where we're back to that 8 hours a day. We don't expect to be pushing that 20-hour limit. So that largely doesn't matter to us. But we will be going over what that means kind of probably in smaller settings when it comes time to meet with your teams individually. So what spring sports will look like: baseball, track, and golf will largely look normal. Practice is starting up whenever they can. Baseball typically starts in January, end of January, track as well, with indoor practices until you can get outside. And then as soon as you can get outside, that's largely when games would start and meets would start. And then same thing with golf tournaments. So that's largely going to be unaffected. I think there are some championship dates that were pushed out for baseball and golf to accommodate the fact that we're adding fall sports to the spring, but expect it to be the same. Men's and women's basketball, they will not start official practice until January 11th, when the first possible competition date of January 22nd. And that will go on in through March, where usually the season is over at that time. And there's a game cap. So usually we play 30 games. We're going to be capped at 22 games. And that's regular season. So then, of course, there's playoffs after that. Men's soccer will start practice on March 15th with the first possible competition date of April 2nd. Volleyball will start January 11th with the first possible competition date of January 29th. That season will run into March. And then cross country, as I mentioned, that's the only sport that we have that the NJCAA hasn't pushed into the spring. And the reason they haven't done that is because typically cross country runners are track runners as well. We only have outdoor track. We don't have indoor. But obviously the weather during indoor is tough, and it's not really conducive to cross country. So it's kind of an all or nothing thing for us. If we run cross country in the fall, it's our opportunity to do it. We can't push it into the spring. So, right now there's some question about cross country. Will there be enough teams left to play or to run meets rather, to compete? For us, we're committed to kind of hanging in there as long as we can, but conditions may become impossible. And at that point, we wouldn't push it to the spring. We just cancel it and focus on track and field. So that's a little bit about cross country. A lot of people are wondering, what if we don't have sports this year? Right now, my outlook on things is, if New York stays the way they are, or if things even go up and maybe come back down, by November, December, I think we're going to be comfortable moving forward with sports. If we get that second wave, that spike in November, December, into January, then, we're going to start to be concerned, obviously, with the safety of our students and coaches. And, you're likely to see cancellation of sports. And, they'll probably start with the ones that are starting up the closest. And then, depending on how long that lasts, could potentially affect the spring sports as well. We're hopeful that won't happen, but we realize that it could. So one of the first questions is, we have scholarship sports at Westchester. Not all of our sports are scholarship, just the Division II and Division I's. And scholarships are only limited to certain individuals. So if you are somebody who has been offered a scholarship at this point, your scholarship will be honored if we end up not having sports. That's provided that you're academically eligible to compete in the first place. We can't honor your scholarship if you're not academically eligible to compete, even if we end up canceling the season because of COVID. So it has to be COVID related cancellation for us to do that. That's a question that we've gotten a lot. So rest assured that those scholarship opportunities will still be there. Would we continue to practice and or scrimmage? The answer to that is yes. Again, if we have the exact same scenario coming into the spring, and let's say the NJCAA or some other governing body says, you can't compete this spring. Meaning like our college, let's say, all right, we're not moving to level 3 to be able to compete. We're going to stay at level 2. If that were to occur, we'd still try to offer some semblance of practices and or scrimmages with outside competition. And again, students wouldn't be using eligibility in order to do that. Again, engagement is really important to us. So we want to make sure that we're seeing the students as much as we can. When will we know more about this? Well, it's kind of like everybody else. You know, we make the best decisions we can at a certain time based on the information that we have. So this kind of marks a certain point for us to say, all right, this is the plan right now. But obviously the plan can change depending on the nature of the virus and what happens in society. It could also change based on, you know, research and science and kind of how society feels about the appropriateness to conduct sports and to have contacts and everything like that. You know, if the science and the consensus amongst the community starts to change, that could be beneficial to what we're trying to do or detrimental to what we're trying to do. So, you know, everything that we do is with safety in mind. So we're going to watch it very closely. We're going to rely on our athletic training staff. We just hired a new athletic trainer, and then we have one trainer carrying over from last year, hopefully. And then we expect to conduct this year with 2 athletic trainers to have a little extra medical help than we've had in the years past. And that should help us keep people safe and also help with the conflicts that we're going to see in the spring when 2 teams may be practicing and competing at the same time. So there's a few things that we need to do in preparation. And this is where I talk about kind of in general, this goes for all students, not just new students. So enrollment. If you're kind of sort of paying attention to this and doing some other things, I really invite you to pay attention to this one part, because it's very, very important, and it can make your life a whole lot simpler if you kind of just hear what I have to say and maybe adjust the way you're going about things. Right now, our enrollment numbers, there was a feature on Fox 5 a couple days ago about WCC. And the message in that feature on the news was, you know, why go to, they actually said Harvard. Why go to Harvard when you could go and remote learn and be sitting at your house and spending all this money when you can go to WCC for a semester or 2? Now, these students are not you. You're here because you want to be a student athlete, and you were expecting to be here anyway. But I make that point to say that the college is really trying to recruit the non-traditional student who would have otherwise gone to a 4-year school. And certainly if they're interested in athletics, they'd have an opportunity to participate. But I say that because we're seeing enrollment increases of 1% to 2% a day these last few weeks. What that means is that we're going to have a real push in enrollment and a real surge. And that's going to put pressure on our normal processes for us to be able to do several things with our students. So if you haven't applied yet, I really recommend applying as soon as possible. There's really no reason, if you intend to be here, that if you haven't applied yet, it's going to slow things down for you if you don't do it. So that's step number 1. Generally, our process is apply, take a placement exam, which is no longer an exam. It is now a placement survey. It's something that you take yourself, and based on your answers to that survey, will determine whether you need any developmental classes, non-college level classes, before you take college level class. So we have that in math and reading and in English. So if somehow you under normal circumstances, again, you take that placement exam or that placement survey and you score below those standards, you're going to be asked to take that developmental class. So that's why that's important. You have to do that before you can be advised, and you have to be advised before you can enroll in your classes. And it's advising and enrollment that's really going to get jammed up in the coming weeks. So again, if we're seeing 1% to 2%, all those people are going to just come flooding in, and you're going to look to get see an advisor. And right now we're doing that online via Zoom. And, you could expect to have wait times of an hour or two. And that's even some days now. Um, that shouldn't be the case when it's quiet, but when it's heavy, that's what you're going to see. And it's going to be frustrating. And you may have to go and come back and be put in a queue. And, you know, um, we're experiencing a lot of this in life. I tried to call an eye doctor today and, couldn't get an appointment or couldn't even get someone to pick up the phone. So, that's because of limited workers and, limited ways of processing people. So do yourself a favor and try to get through the enrollment process as soon as possible. Don't wait, get it done now, get your classes, get advised, enroll in your classes. And then the last point is to make sure you do a payment arrangement. Payment arrangement could be, for some of you, is already in place. Maybe it's a scholarship. Maybe it's financial aid in TAP and Pell grants. Maybe it's student loans. Maybe it's you paying cash. Maybe it's getting put on a payment plan so you can pay over 3 or 4 pay periods. But that has to be in place once you register for your classes, or what happens is there's these deadlines leading up to the semester, and then once classes start, you'll get dropped from your classes for non-payment or for not having a payment arrangement in class. And that's really frustrating, because what happens is your classes get thrown into a pool of classes. Students start to take those seats in those classes and those spots, and then they end up shutting you out essentially. And then you go to re-register for your classes and you can't get that class anymore. You can't get the time that you wanted, to make sure that you're able to practice and compete and all those type of things. So it's kind of a frustrating thing that could be avoided by making sure you complete that process. The same goes for financial aid. If you expect to get financial aid, you have to complete a FAFSA form. And that's a form that would allow you to be eligible to get TAP and Pell. I'm not an expert in the area, but it's something that I do know that you're going to want to do sooner than later. If you are a scholarship awardee, somebody who's been offered a scholarship, it is required that you do your FAFSA and file for financial aid in order for you to get that scholarship. So if you get to the fall and you haven't done financial aid yet, we can't apply your scholarship to your account, and you're going to be held accountable with a bill. And that's something that we don't want to see, because obviously we recruited you. We wanted you to come here for a reason. We just got to get you through that. So, so make sure that you treat the financial aid process just like you do for the enrollment process. Okay. The other thing that we're going to have to do before we get started is every student athlete is going to need to have a physical before they practice. So that is standard. That's what we do every year. But this year it's even more important, and it's even more challenging. We have a team doctor who we're going to work with to have one day to have physicals, but we expect to have about 150 student athletes coming into this fall session. And there's no way we're going to be able to process that many people in one day. It just, we have to take our normal physical process, which probably takes about 20 minutes of physical, and probably separate that with all the social distancing measures that we're going to have to put in place. So that's going to take even longer now. We'll try to process them as quickly as possible. Doesn't mean that it's 20 minutes to get to the next person. We're trying to do different things, to speed it up. But you can imagine it's hard to get through a day of physicals that way. So my suggestion to you is if you can get a physical with your own doctor at this point, or some kind of clinic, go ahead and get it now. This way you don't need to take part of that process, and we can just focus on those who just haven't gotten their physicals yet. If you can't get that physical, either through one of those two means, then you're going to have to be held out of practice until you can get it. So I mentioned that to you now just so you have enough time. Our standards for physicals is that they have to be dated within the past year. So if you've had a physical, October 2019, let's say, we can get you started with that, but we're not going to be able to have you practice or compete past that point. You'll have to get another one. We realize that a lot of people's insurance only covers one physical a year. So that's sometimes what we do. If you got one, let's say in March, and you're a baseball player, it's the same situation. You're good to start now, but once you get into the spring, you're going to have to redo your physical, or else you're not going to be able to compete. So, so I tell you about that now. And then there's just one other thing. This is kind of a secondary thing now that we know that we don't have sports this fall. But before we compete, we have to make sure that every student athlete has on file in the athletics office a copy of the student's high school transcript. It can't be the diploma. It has to be the final transcript. So signed and sealed with a graduation date on it. If we don't have that, then we can't certify you as eligible. Now, again, we have some time, but I'm just telling you about it now. A lot of high schools aren't even open, so if you don't have that in your possession, you're probably not going to have the opportunity to get it until September anyway. Same goes for transfers. If you are a transfer student, we need a copy of your official college transcript from that previous college on file. Whether you have credits from that college or not, whether you're using them for eligibility, whether you've given the college your transcript, WCC your transcript, we need it regardless. So it could be a photocopy of the original. It's something, if you bring me the original, I'll make a copy of it. Could be a scan of the original, under these circumstances. But just to keep those things in mind, those are things that we're going to need. Sometimes I am able to get them from the college. So if during your application process you submitted one to the college, that's fine. But a lot of times what we see is I'll go to get it from the college, which I do have access to them. It'll be the unofficial one before they actually graduated, and then the student came by and brought their diploma, and we scan that. That does not fit our needs. So if that happens, your coach is probably going to come back to you, or I'll come back to you and say, hey, that's not good. You still have to go to your high school and get an official copy. So I'm just telling you about that now. All right, with that, I've talked a long time. I hope that that's been comprehensive enough to be able to answer some general questions, but with that, I'll open it up. So feel free to include in the chat. You can send a message to everyone, or if you click the drop down and just click on my name, if you don't want to show who's asking the question, you feel uncomfortable about it, feel free to just send it to me and then I'll see it. But we do have one question so far. It's, how is NJCAA bowling affected, especially with the recent USBC statements? So what that refers to is USBC Collegiate is another governing body of ours. They've changed their season, and the NJCAA is, and I happen to be the chair of the bowling committee, the National Bowling Committee. So I'm in tune to what's going on. I think what's likely going to happen is we are going to change our championship dates to make them more in line with the USBC championship dates. It was something that we were looking at before USBC made that decision. The NJCAA didn't want to make that decision yet. They set it up so that our championships would be at the same time as they normally are. And then like 3 days later, USBC changed their position on it. And then now we got to deal with it. So, but I think what you're going to end up with is, our championships pushed back to a week or two before the USBC championships. So I hope that answers your question, Jaleel. When does the fall semester start? I believe it is September 1st or 2nd. I think it's the Monday. Let me just look at my calendar here. I know it's Monday's Labor Day. It's the Tuesday after Labor Day. So it's the 3rd, September 3rd. First day of classes. So one other thing I'd kind of I'd mentioned to you, as students, it's important to keep in mind, class attendance is something that's imperative in order for you to be successful as a student. That's a general statement that probably should go without saying, but you'd be surprised at how many students kind of take the approach of, well, I'll catch up, or, the first couple classes we're not really doing anything, so I won't go to them, or, I'll show up late, or, it's fine, we're just getting started kind of thing. While your first class, that may be the case, and you may get a little leeway. What happens is if you get into 2, 3, 4 classes and you haven't attended, or the professor hasn't marked you as attending, what happens is you will get withdrawn from the class, administratively withdrawn. So you get a WN, it's called. It's withdrew, never attended. You have no control over that. You're just gone. And under normal circumstances in the fall, that can mean a lot, because if that withdrawal makes it so now you're only you're trying to pursue less than 12 credits, you're automatically ineligible at that moment to continue. So you do all this work to get on the team. Maybe you're a starter, maybe you're one of our star players, and then all of a sudden you can't play anymore because you were withdrawn from your class. So that's something to keep in mind. So I highly suggest everyone go to all your classes. It's really half the battle when it comes to community college and your ability to be successful. So I just mentioned that. You'll hear it again from me for sure. So our locker rooms and showers available for use to kids. So in our first sub levels, the answer to that is going to be no. When we're in sub level 2, we're going to ask you to come to campus, go to the practice site, and then leave as soon as practice is over. It's one of those more restrictive steps that you're going to see in the beginning. As we move into sub level 3, you'll see locker rooms open, but coaches are going to be expected, and all of our locker rooms are different, so it's hard to put a number on the capacity, but there will be a number on capacity for each locker room. So one of the bigger locker rooms, we may say, all right, only 6 people at a time, let's say. And then people can go in and do what they got to do and then leave. Our smaller locker rooms, the number may be less. That's one of the steps that we're taking to make sure our students are safe. So, and then showers, kind of the same thing. Showers, those restrictions may be a little different, but again, you're not going to see showers till sub level 3. Since soccer changed seasons, will the amount of games still be the same, or will there be less games? So we're required to play a certain amount of teams within our region. On a normal year, we will play, 1 or 2 non-region games, and then maybe a couple of scrimmages on top of it. I expect to see that we probably won't play any non-region games. With the exception of maybe Ulster. Ulster is going to be Division II this year, and they're part of the Mid-Hudson Conference. So I expect them we'll still play them. So the number of games won't be reduced drastically, but it could be by 1 or 2. Unless, of course, one of the other member schools elects not to have athletics. If that's the case, it remains to be seen whether we'll replace that game or not. I'd like to think that if we're playing, all the other schools will be playing too. We're usually pretty united, and we're all largely in the same boat on how this is impacting us. But certainly a school, for financial reasons or for just safety reasons, or however they see fit, they could decide to not have sports, and that might reduce the amount of games that we have. But fortunately at WCC, like I said, you're in a great spot where we're really focusing on the safety. Yet we're trying to find every possible way of participating that we can and keeping sports on the table. And then we're also in a pretty fortunate financial position that we're not so worried this year about how the finances would affect the ability to have our teams. The college is tremendously supportive about athletics. They understand the role athletics plays on a college campus and what it means to students. And, that's one problem that we don't really have to battle right now. That could certainly change, but that's where we are right now. So that's a great question. Can you still be on the team with remedial courses? Yes, absolutely. So whether they're remedial or developmental, that's kind of 2 different words for the same thing. It's non-credit, non-college level credit classes. However, it's still countable for the amount of hours that you need to be eligible to be full-time. And that's how we view it. So generally English classes, developmental and remedials, are worth 3 credits, even though they're worth 0 on the bottom of your transcript. And the maths generally are worth 4. And there are a few combos that are worth 5 credits. Those are combination classes. And so sometimes there are 2 classes in one, that may be 5. But as long as you're full-time in the semester that you're trying to compete in, then you're going to be eligible that satisfies one of the eligibility requirements. So, when will we get more details about the soccer team practice days and locations? We're working on that. It should be very soon. We wanted to have this session first and, make sure that we answer these questions. And then there's a meeting tomorrow on campus about kind of the sub-levels and gives us a sense of what we can expect to when the sub-levels will start. Certainly August 9th will give us, that's kind of the next date to give us a better indicator about when we can have on-campus classes. And knowing that's important because then the coaches can kind of put a plan together for whatever they're going to do in the meantime. So, it's a fluid situation, but one that we're trying to codify as soon as we can. So, soccer tryouts would be in March. Coach Carabotta, are you still on? I will let you weigh in. If not, I know Coach Lodo is here. But what I'll say is, I think the plan is, when we've had 65, 70 people try out for our soccer team. Knowing,
Mike, by the way, I'm sorry.
great. Yeah, I'll just say a few words and then I'll let you take over. Based on that, that's a lot of players. And so normally what we do is we use the month of August to whittle down the team to get to a roster around 25. And so, based on that, this year, if we're just practicing in the fall, we don't really need to do that. And we can kind of take a longer assessment period. And then again, we're engaging our students and providing you with an opportunity. So we look at that as a good thing. Even though you may not make the team, we're giving you a really long look by having you practice throughout the fall. There may be some really cool things that we can do in the fall. If we move out of phase 2 and into phase 3, we can start having, for soccer in particular, we may be making mini teams and having more of like an intramural competitive thing going on where Westchester CC United, we can create something fun and have a competition throughout the fall. And carrying more people may make that a little more fun. So that's just some of the basic things from my perspective. And of course, Coach can weigh in on some of the more particular things.
No, I think that's right on the ball, Mike. We're looking forward to just get everybody involved. Obviously, get fit, get acquainted with everyone else on the team. Just looking get a good camaraderie, good feel of the program, what's it about. Once we establish that, then we'll be willing to see how we're going to progress to the spring. And come springtime, we're going to select the top players and we'll go with that. But throughout the fall, we're looking to everyone to come in and just, like I said, work on fitness, work on skills, and then, like I said, get acquainted with the way we run the program, and just get acquainted with everybody else on the team as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Coach. All right. So soccer, I don't think I missed anything. A lot of soccer questions. That's great. Okay. I invite you to ask any last minute questions. Coaches, do you have any questions? What month exactly do we start? So I think you asked about soccer before, so I assume you mean soccer. The coaching staff is going to be putting some stuff together from now until September 1st, or really starting. We normally don't start till August 1st. So we're going to be looking at having some online Zoom training sessions to kind of replace what we would normally start in August 1st. So sometime in August, we will start with those activities. Those will be voluntary activities, but we'll give you the opportunity to participate in them. And then starting in September, as I said, we will hopefully move to level 2, and level 2 will allow for us to be on campus and practice. And so our hope is that the month of September, not only for soccer, but for all sports. So hope that answers your question, Tariq. Coaches, any questions? Do any coaches want to chime in while we have a captive audience here? And anything from your perspective, feel free to unmute yourself. All right. Well, hearing none, again, I thank you for joining me today. Keep in mind, if you came in late and you missed something or you feel like there was something you need to go back over, we did record the session. We are going to post it on our athletics website. It's gowccvikings.com. You'll see a lot of information there. If you haven't visited it before, it's a really outstanding website. We really do a lot to shine a light on the achievements of our students, our teams, our coaches, and everything that goes on at WCC Athletics. And so feel free to kind of look around there. You'll also find access to our coaches' information if you need an email or a contact. My contact is on there as well. And the forms that I mentioned to you, so if you wanted to get a physical, there's a physical form under. You can click on Inside Athletics. The drop-down menu shows you the physical form. And there's a lot of great information there. So this will be posted for you to be able to view later if you want to go back through it, or if a parent wasn't able to make it and they have some questions and they want to see it. And then certainly anybody can reach out to me at any time if they have any questions, as we go. And we'll do our best to keep you informed as things change and move forward. We're excited to get started. We know it's going to be a different year than we normally have. It's going to come with its adversity and its challenges, but like always, we're there to meet the challenge. And I'm confident that we have the right coaches in place, the right staff members in place, and the right process in place for us to make it as best as it can be under the circumstances. So we look forward to meeting you in the fall and working with you. And thanks again for joining us. Everybody have a good night.